Yo! So what I want to do with this is I just want to make a video about everything I've learnt about digital music and making music on the computer, doing it as a hobby. It took me a long time to, get my head around how things work. Like, I didn't even know you could get VSTs and orchestral packages and things like that when I started. I was making music that sounded like, Duck Hunt or something. It might be a bit boring for some who already know what it is, but I just really want to start from the beginning. And it's going to be more of a log from my perspective, but I hope that it can come in handy for someone out there, and hopefully you'll learn something from it. So, all right. So MIDI stands for Musical what does it stand for again? Musical Instrument Digital Interface, or Musical Interface Digital Instrument, one of those things. But basically what it is, in a nutshell, is it's how you make music on the computer. You use it as a way to plot notes in, and the computer plays those notes back, and they will play a sound from the notes you've put into the computer. So what you do is you use a DAW to go into the kitchen and get something to drink. You use another DAW, a DAW, which stands for a Digital Audio Workstation, and that's where you make your music. I use Reaper. That's a really good program to use. It's very cheap, but obviously there's others out there that use the industry standard sort of ones like Cubase and all that. So in the DAW, you start a new track, and then you go insert new MIDI item. Double click inside that, and you'll see on the left here you've got your virtual keyboard, which mimics a real keyboard, and when you press a key, it makes a noise. And that's the basics of MIDI. So with MIDI is you draw in notes. Check out this masterpiece. And you'll notice that it sounds it sounds very bad. That's because with every computer it comes with something called General MIDI. That's a MIDI sound bank, and it's got notes from 0 to 127. The first one is an acoustic grand piano, which that's supposed to be, but obviously it doesn't sound anything like that, so don't use MIDI sounds ever. Okay, so we use MIDI to plot notes into the computer, and the computer plays those notes back. And then what we do is we use a MIDI CC lane, which stands for Continuous Controller, and that basically controls how those samples are played back. So down here under the notes, you can see this lane, and this is the CC lane. And the first thing you want to learn about is in here to choose velocity. And velocity basically means how hard those samples are played. So with the piano, you can either press, softly or very hard, and the computer will reflect that based on the velocity. So here, the velocity is all the way up to 100, 127 actually. That's so 100%, but with MIDI, it's always power of 2. Computers love power of 2 things. Like 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and 128. So with 128, that's it actually starts at 0, so it goes to 127 is the highest number. So actually 127, as you can see in here, just there where my mouse is, 127 is the highest it goes to. So 127 is the highest loudness, all the way down to 0. So basically I will set it to somewhere around half, and I'll just, I'll move a bit less. Now I'll play that back, and you'll hear the pressure that the piano's played at. I will replace this shitty sounding thing with something that sounds better. Alright, so I've loaded up a drum or a percussion VST in place of the general MIDI sample. So as you can hear here, You know, it sounds a lot better than a bloody piano. So now I'll just like plot things in. So basically, so I'll just draw them in like this. I'll make a little tune with it. So this is that. Yeah, and then I want it to sort of, start with a big boom. Put a big boom in there. Sorry, it's a bit crackly. I don't know why it does that. And then I want to accentuate. So I'll put these ones in. Boom. And I'll put some high stuff in up here. So put that one is this. It's just got 2 samples here. 1, 2, 1, 2, which is usually that emulates like 2 hands, so it's a bit of, it makes the samples sound a bit different, so it's a lot easier. See, let's look. This is what I mean. If the velocity's just all the same, 100%, 127, all high, listen to how dodgy it sounds. It's not the best. So what do I do? So the big boom, I might keep that fairly high, so I'll keep it probably that standard. These ones are sort of, I want these to be a lot lower, so I'll move these maybe down like this, but I want all these ones to be a bit higher, and then these, well, they're way too loud already, so I'll move them down, but these 4 here, I want these to sort of gradually grow. So what I'll do is, I'll move that down, this one up a bit, and then this one higher, so you can see here that sort of, see that little line, it sort of do, you know. These ones, I want those to be fairly soft, so maybe like that, but maybe I'll accentuate the end bits, so maybe these, I'll accentuate that a little bit, just so it's like, let's listen to that. I don't know why it's so crackly. Anyway, that sounds alright, so I'll just double that up a bit, you know, and let's listen to that. So this is with the velocity changes. So you see how that makes, you know, a big difference just by changing the pressure at what they're played at. So another example of where you'd use velocity is with fast spiccato strings. And see, with this sample, listen to this, you know, apologies in advance, it sounds a little bit like a machine gun. So obviously that sounds terrible. One thing I will like to point out just first is, depending on your sample library, you might have one that has a round robin. So if you have round robin, definitely use it, because what that will do is it will mix up it'll instead of playing the same note over and over and over and over again, it'll pick notes out of a few, like a bank of a few sampled ones. So it's a lot more random, sounds a lot more realistic. So I'll just turn that on and automatically it'll sound a lot better. But you know, it's still not good, obviously. So what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll just decrease pressure a little bit, and I'm going to accentuate. So you know, dun, 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 dun. Maybe that one, dun, dun, dun. And then I'll do, you know. Alright, so I'll move these up a bit, and I'll see what that sounds like. So that sounds a lot better. And one other thing to make it sound a lot better as well is, depending on your library, see how I've got the close mic, and that will just basically, that means the microphone's just been put straight in front of the player, so it's going to sound like it's right in front of you, which doesn't sound that epic. So basically, you just switch it across to the stage mic, which means the microphone would have been somewhere else, and it gets a lot of the room, the reverberance of the room, to really fatten up the sound a lot more. So play that. So yeah, big difference from that machine gun sound. All right, so I've gone through and changed all the staccato notes to a good velocity. So this is what it sounds like. But you notice everything's so perfect. Like everything's on the right level, everything's in the right time. So one good thing to do, I don't know how all other DAWs work, but this one is just basically select them all, go over here to humanize, and you notice, see with timing, watch down here in the CC lane, adjust the timing offset, everything starts to play out of place. So it's like, it's not all on the same beat. It's more human, And then with velocity, it's the same sort of thing with how hard everyone plays. So you don't always play this. I shouldn't be doing that. But you don't always play the same piano, same string at the same pressure, because no one's a robot. So with velocity, you change that, and you notice the CC lane, it starts to randomize the pressure at which they play. So you give that a little bit of difference, maybe like 11% with timing and maybe 20% with velocity. I'll see what that sounds like. And sounds pretty good to me. Alright, so we looked at velocity, and velocity is great for hit samples, like percussion or staccatos, spiccatos, piano. But say you have a sustain sample, and a sustain means it just keeps playing. As long as that note exists and is still there, it'll just keep on playing. So, for instance, with this cymbal, alright, so firstly, that's way too long. I'm not going to use it that long, so I'll move it to how long I want it. So I want it to be about that long. And what you do with these ones is, instead of using the velocity, you use the mod wheel. And the mod wheel is CC number 1. And with most VST libraries these days, is the mod wheel controls the dynamics, which basically means I'm playing it soft to hard. So the lanes work exactly the same way as velocity. So you'll put in a note down here, and that'll play it really soft, and you put in a note up here, that'll play it really hard. But the thing I was confused about when I first started music is, I thought, I'll put the start note really low at the start, and I'll put the note really high at the end, and it'll gradually transition to go up. So, but when I played it like this, it didn't do it. It just went from low to high as soon as it got to that high note. And that's what continuous controller means, is see here the note, see how the little puts out a tail, and it means because once you trigger it, it'll last forever. So what you need to do is you need to actually draw in those samples. And another thing I did was I had my sample rate really low. So I'll draw the samples in to change them like this, and now watch what happens. So watch what happens now. So it sort of goes, you have to change your sample rate at which you do it. So I'll just change it to the highest one, and literally you just draw the curve in, and that's how you change the dynamics of the sustained sample. So in this case, it will be rising. So let's play it back. And that's how you rise a sample. And this works really well with, say, strings, brass, woodwinds, everything that's a sustained instrument. So with this cymbal is, I want to adjust it so it goes high, but you can see I'll play it back. See how it didn't start at 0 volume? And that's because the mod wheel isn't volume. The mod wheel is just the dynamics of the sample you've been given. So if the lowest level on that sample is not 0 volume, then it won't be able to play at 0, because in real life, like, you can never play at 0. Like, you can never, smash a cymbal at 0 volume. So therefore, that's when you'll switch the CC lane to a volume channel. So you go into volume, and then volume will always be, so you'll change it from 0 to 100%, and then that will also take into account the dynamics that you've done, and it will raise it up from 0 volume to 100. So let's hear that. And that's how you make something go from 0 to 100%. So that's what the volume comes in handy for. Alright, so now we'll talk about the on-off state parameters in the CC lane. And one of those parameters is number 64, and it's called the sustain or the hold pedal. And how you use that is, so let's just take a listen to this piano for a second. So you notice it sort of plays and then it just mutes basically straight away. It doesn't have much of a tail, and that's because the hold pedal's not down. So like in real life, like a real piano is, if you want those notes to maintain their sound, you'd put the pedal down, right? So MIDI emulates that. So if you go into 64 to the hold pedal, and you can actually tell the computer, you can tell that I'm pushing down on the pedal now. So in the lane, you basically just go all the way up, and everything above halfway that means the pedal's on, and everything below half means the pedal's off. So we want to put the pedal on, and let's see how that sounds. So you notice it keeps the notes, it keeps that residual sound sort of keeping going, but it stays on for a little too long. So in real life, you'd put when you change notes dramatically, you'd turn it off. So once you get to here, you'd probably want to turn it off, but then you want to turn it back on again. So you take your pedal off and put it back on. So just stepping, and then you'll do the same thing over here. Take the pedal off, put it back on again, and let's see how that sounds. And there you go, that's how you use the sustain pedal on or off. So another example of where you would use the hold pedal is to do a sort of fake legato. And what legato means is connected notes. So to change from one note to another and make it sound seamless. Some samples have that built in, so they have a legato patch, but some don't. So for instance, check out this string passage here. So you notice, especially around this part where it was a dramatic change, it's just a lot of pause going on. So what you can do is you can come into the hold pedal, and basically where it changes is you can put the hold pedal on and wait till it's changed, then turn the hold pedal off just a bit after, and that will just hold those notes into the next one a lot better. And it's sort of just fakes it. If your samples don't do it. So let's listen to this again. And that's how you fake it. And that only works in some circumstances. But something you have to be wary of is that because it's sustained for a bit longer, that means the note won't technically change until here. So if your patch allows you to double up notes, the way I would do it is I would move, so I'd select everything that I can shift backwards, and I would literally just put the starting notes back. So there we go. So now you see this section here, when it comes here, this one isn't finished yet, but the note will start playing prematurely, so that when it goes into when it actually hits its peak, it seems like it's changed, so it's more like a legato. And also you notice here, see how these notes are right next to each other? I will literally just get rid of that and just stretch it out, and that will, you know, that will make it as if it's like seamlessly changing as well. So let's just listen to what that sounds like. So everything will be in time with this one, as opposed to the legato, which you can still use, you just got to shift everything back manually as well. So you may as well just do something like this. So that's how you use a on or off controller. What they're good for as well is you can use it to sort of, say you put an effect on your track, you can automate your own controller. So say you get something like this nano controller, you can just, you can assign a button to turn, any of these buttons, you can turn the effect on or off, so you can do a lot with the on or off effects. Alright, so another use of MIDI is something called key switching, and that if your sample allows it, you can hold down a MIDI key to change the articulation or change the sample that plays back. So for instance, take this women's choir bit. So it's all R's, and I actually want them to say different phrases, like E, A, B, C, D, B, K, B, P. So within the patch, so I'll go into the patch here, and you can see here that it's just set to R. But if I scroll down, I've got all these different ones. I've got R, E, E, however you say that, E, O, U, and I can actually change that. So I can change that by pressing down a different key. So you can see here it's KSW, that stands for key switch, and it says C0 to G0, and that means if I hold down the C, that will be R. If I go up a note, it'll be E, and keep going until I get all the way to G, which would be U. So all I have to do is find the C0. So my first note starts here, so I go down to C0, or it's probably C1 actually. Sometimes it doesn't work the same, so I'll put it on C, and you do it before the sample starts, and that's the best way. So it triggers before the sample starts. Sometimes samples play, if you put them at the same time, the sample will start playing and it won't trigger. So it's better to put it before. So this should be still on R. Yep. So if I move this up to something else, it should be different. Yep, so now it's E, and if I move it up here, it'll be different once again. And so forth. So move it up here, see what that does. So I want it to go, I don't know, A, something like that, A. So I'll put in different notes, and this one I want to change before that one, so I'll put it here, and then for this one, put it there, and then before the last one plays, I'll put it here and we'll just see what that sounds like. So there you go, that's how you change the sounds with the key switch. And you can also do that with different, like say the strings, you can play sustain, then you can key switch into staccato and start playing a staccato phrase, and then key switch it back to sustain again and play a different note. And another thing is a loop. And so within this VST here, say damage for example, if I hold down a key, it'll just keep playing that as long as the key's held down. So what I've got here is, in this example, I've held this note for that long because that's how long I want the loop to play for. Just press play. And it will just keep playing that loop. So for an example of a trigger, I've got the chime sample. So if I just literally tap this key, it will initiate the trigger and it will just keep playing until the sample is over, no matter what keys I press. So if I just do it once, there you go. So that's an example of a trigger as opposed to a loop. Right, so another CC that works different is the pitch. So if I go to pitch, now you'll see with this one, it doesn't actually, it's not high. See how it starts in the middle or to low? It's all changed from the center. So it just changes the pitch up and down. So basically, I can draw something in like this to make the pitch go up, something like this to make it go down. And you hear what that sounds like? Gotcha! What was that off? Encino Man. Where's the juice? No, it's in the juice. That's how you use the pitch thing. I hope it helps. If it doesn't, then I'm sorry. Fuck. What? I don't know how to say shit. So that's a lot of things I've learned about MIDI, and I hope that all helps a little bit. If it doesn't, then let me know in the comments and I'll try and help you out. But here's what it all sounds like all together anyway. And I'll just let you have a listen, and thanks for watching.